coverage of Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated continues as Ohio State prepares for its tournament opener. Friday afternoon, played at Mackey Arena on the campus of Purdue. The Ohio State Buckeyes and Oral Roberts, the champions out of the Summit League, in the 2 versus 15 matchup in the South region to get rolling with the NCAA tournament. The winner plays either Florida or Virginia Tech, but it's the NCAA tournament. You can't look beyond just the game that's in front of you because anything can happen, and the Summit League champs certainly hope that they can make some history and knock off the Buckeyes. So we thought it was appropriate to bring in a guy who knows Oral Roberts basketball as well as anybody across the country. It's the play-by-play voice in his 5th year down in Tulsa, Adam Hildebrandt, who's been kind enough to join us. Thanks for spending some time with us. Congratulations on what has been a great season for the Golden Eagles and a memorable tournament run, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been a fun year and one that started out with so many question marks. I mean, which games were going to be able to be played right up to the beginning of the season. It was like, okay, which conferences may like to shorten their non-conference or not play any non-conference. And so there was some tinkering basically right up to the first tip-off of the year of who the Golden Eagles were going to get to play. But the non-conference schedule at the Division I level in particular ended up stacking up really well. And it's been a fun year from start to finish.
Well, you've certainly had plenty of firepower to watch offensively. I don't care if you're watching mid-major college ball or the best of the best teams in the nation, and many of those this year played in the Big Ten. When you've got a guy like Max Abmas on the floor on any given night, watching him score has to be fun, and certainly I'm sure has helped your highlight reel. Max, the leading scorer in all of college basketball this year, and for a team defensively in Ohio State that at times has struggled a bit this season, I mean, there's no doubt about it. He is at the top of the scouting report. What makes him a special player?
Well, he kind of surprised at least those of us who didn't see him work all summer, because last year he played off the ball a lot more. This year they put the ball in his hands a ton, and he's been able to really improve off the dribble. That was one thing that he really worked on over the course of the offseason. And so his ability to read ball screens and make the right decisions off of those, and then, of course, to shoot it off the dribble and from immense range. I mean, they call him midcourt Max, and they're not wrong. He can hit from real deep. And so his ability to score off the dribble, and then if they are getting out and guarding him deep, to make the right pass and make the right reads has been really helpful to this team's offense as a whole. Kevin O'Banner has certainly played off of that quite a bit as well, but he's a lethal shooter. He's quick enough to try to get by people and get to the rim, and he's shooting around 90% at the free throw line too. So if you do foul him and send him to the line, he's going to make you pay the vast majority of the time there as well. So he truly can score at all three levels, and for a guy who last year was mostly a three-point shooter, to see him develop that basically over the course of one offseason was very, very impressive, and it's been highly effective.
Well, and it's beyond just him and the ability to shoot it from anywhere. You know, he certainly seems like the ringleader there. But as a team, more than 11 three-pointers per game, also tops in Division I. I suppose the question is when he's had nights where maybe, Max hasn't dropped 25 or 30 points consistently, what are some of the other three-point threats that Ohio State fans might want to be aware of?
Well, Kevin O'Banner is probably option 1A or 1B for the Golden Eagles. He was actually 50% from the field, 50% from three, and 90% from the line in conference play this year. Very effective three-point shooter despite being a big, so he can really help stretch the floor. Kareem Thompson has shot over 40% basically all year from behind the three-point arc as well. And then Deshane Weaver really got into his own at the Summit League tournament. He was a kid that originally was committed to Arkansas out of high school. He had an injury and ended up at ORU. And he made his first 6 three-point attempts in the Summit League tournament before missing his last 4, which is a bummer when you miss your last 4, but you'll take 60% over the course of a tournament anytime. So there are definitely some other options. Carlos Jurgens has really stepped up to the plate recently, scoring the basketball as well. And Max, he scored, I think it was 23 a game over the course of the 3 games of the Summit League tournament, but he did not shoot the 3 ball very well at all. He did not make a 3 in the first game of the Summit League tournament. But he ended up with 10 assists in game 2 and 6 in the championship game. So he has found those other guys around him. I think they've been building in confidence all year and have really started to hit their stride at the end of the season, which, of course, is what any team wants to do.
Looks like R.J. Glasper got hurt midway through, maybe more than midway through the year. He's played 18 games. Not sure if he'll be able to go this weekend, but if he is, what should Buckeye fans expect from R.J. Glasper?
He's definitely another guy that can shoot the three and make you pay in that way. And he was a guy who, over the course of his time this year, consistently hit big shots when teams say we're trying to blanket Max. When it came down to crunch time and he needed somebody else to make a big shot, RJ Glasper, more often than not, was that guy over the course of the year until he got hurt in Fargo. And that's where we've seen Kareem Thompson and Carlos Jurgens kind of elevate their scoring over the last month or so now since that happened. But yeah, he is a guy who, despite being in his first year at the Division I level, he knew how to score. He scored more than 1,500 points as a Division II player. So he knows how to put the ball on the rim. It's kind of like the Hoosiers thing. It's still 10 feet tall and the same distance around. And so he is absolutely capable of scoring the basketball if he's on the floor.
So Oral Roberts, obviously in the Summit League, it's a one-bid league, and the fact that the record is 16-10 is kind of irrelevant. You get hot at the right time of year, you make a run through your conference tournament, and you punch your ticket to the big dance. And considering what happened last year and how, there was all this buildup toward the tournament again every year, and then all of a sudden it's taken away, perhaps this year's tournament means just a little bit more, given what we've all been through the last 12 months. But, a 16-10 season, I'm not sure is totally fair to say, hey, look, this team is only 6 games over 500. It certainly looks like you played a pretty tough non-conference schedule, particularly Oklahoma State and Missouri, and Wichita State. I know those were all 3 big games early in the year. Mm-hmm. Kind of hard to learn things that you can apply late in the year that happened back in, I guess, November and early December. But what do you remember about those games in particular that might carry over into this first round game against Ohio State?
Well, those games were really where we started to see Max emerge. He struggled a little bit against Missouri, but as a ball handler and a distributor, he was really good in Stillwater and out-dueled Cade Cunningham. He actually outscored Cunningham in that game. Obviously the Cowboys got it done late in that contest, but ORU was right there till the finish in that one, lost by five at Wichita State. And then in the last non-conference game of the year, led by 10 at halftime at Arkansas and led by as many as 12 in the second half of that game. Now, they ended up losing by 11 in that contest, but every Division I opponent that ORU played in the non-conference schedule is in Indiana, getting ready to play in this tournament. So those guys know, hey, we've seen some of the best teams around, literally the best teams in our geographical area, and they've seen one of the best players in the country in Cade Cunningham. So there's not really a team or a situation where ORU hasn't experienced something at least pretty similar over the course of this year. And I think that gives those guys a lot of confidence. Not only, you had to go and play at those venues, at road venues, where as now will be a neutral site venues. So this is a team that won't back down from anybody. That doesn't mean they're going to go out and win every game by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not going to necessarily be intimidated just because there's a number 2 on the other side of the bracket.
Adam Hildebrandt, our guest, the play-by-play voice for Oral Roberts as the Buckeyes and Golden Eagles get ready to open up the tournament on Friday afternoon. Let's talk a little bit about your head coach, Paul Mills, who certainly has got some major college basketball experience after spending quite a bit of time down at Baylor. What's the prototype of a Paul Mills team? What can Ohio State fans expect there?
A team that's going to space the floor. If you go into some of their early season, right after they get back from summer break and you get into the gym with those guys, the first thing you notice is there's X's all the way around the arc where they want guys kind of to be standing. And it is the first probably 10 practices every year. It seems like 90% of the things that they talk about offensively is spacing. It doesn't really matter at that point in time whether the shots go in or not. It's the proper spacing on the floor. And so they really like to spread you out. We talked about those shooters earlier, so they've got a lot of guys that can score it. And when that spacing is correct, it allows everything with the offense to flow. They want to get the ball through the paint, not necessarily throw it down to a big in the paint and let them pass it back out. But if they can have a guard weave in there and then throw it across the paint to an open three, they like to have that a lot. In fact, they were doing some. He's real big into analytics and kind of diving into those deeper numbers, and so they break down their shot categories into points per possession. So if we have a paint touch 3 or the ball at least goes across the paint, then that is 2.1 points per possession. Or if it's a non-paint 3 that doesn't come off a ball screen, it's like 0.8 points per possession. And so they dig into a lot of those. At one point, Paul literally said on one of our coaches shows this year, we average more than two points per shot on paint touch threes. Why do we ever shoot any other shots? It looks like because the Golden Eagles shoot so many, they're top 10 in 3-point attempts in the year. Your first thought is, boy, that's a lot. Should they be shooting that many? And then you see some of those numbers and they're like, well, yeah, they probably should. That's a good shot for them. So he really dives into those numbers. He has been working with this team over the course of the year on the defensive end, and we've started to see that step up to the plate over the last couple of years. No opponent, if I remember correctly, scored in the first 3 minutes in any of the 3 Summit League tournament games. They held opponents scoreless in the first 3 minutes of all 3 of those contests. So they're trending in the right direction over there. But spacing, kind of a free-flowing offense, and they'll run some sets, but a lot of the time they're going to let Max Asmus have the basketball and see how the defense plays him and trust him to make the right reads.
I'm glad you brought up the defense because that's definitely something I wanted to ask about. I'm pretty sure that I've read of all the 68 teams that are in the tournament that Oral Roberts has the most points allowed per game defensively. And so, look, it certainly has the feeling that with this kind of offense, you've been able to outscore your mistakes throughout the course of the year. But where have you seen the defense improve that leads you to believe it's possible to beat a 2 seed?
A couple of things. First, this team, frankly, struggled to stay in front of the basketball man-to-man early on in the season, and that led to some really easy 3-point shots. And guys driving past the original defender, and then help comes, of course, and you kick it out to an open shooter. That was a problem early on, and we still see that flash up at times, but it's gotten better really since that North Dakota State series when we went up to Fargo. I walked into practice and they were, I think they spent half an hour just doing spacing, fitting, and things like that in man-to-man defense. And that has helped a lot. And we've seen that improve quite a bit. And subsequently, we've seen the 3-point percentage allowed numbers go down. They're not great numbers, but they certainly were better than they were towards the beginning of the year and in the first half or so of conference play. So that's been a lot better. And then in the tournament, in the Summit League tournament, the Golden Eagles mixed some zone in there on a couple occasions. It was really effective against South Dakota State in the semifinals. And so that may be something, especially if the bigs get into foul trouble, that the Golden Eagles turn to again. But staying in front of the ball in man-to-man and then rotating properly, certainly in the zone, have both improved over the course of the year.
Voice of the Eagles, Adam Hildebrandt, a couple more minutes with him. I would imagine the high point of the season was the most recent point. You win the conference championship, punch your ticket. That certainly would qualify in my book. How about the low point of the season? Where did you think, if at all, things were going really poorly and you weren't sure if the season would recover?
Well, there was a point after the second home series. The Summit League did back-to-back games in conference play, and you only went to half of the venue. So we'd go somewhere else and play 2 on back-to-back nights and come home, and the next week and you'd host somebody for 2 nights. And so after the second home series, ORU was actually 2-2 at home. They split their first home series with North Dakota, and they split their second home series with Kansas City. And now Kansas City turned out to be a really solid team, especially on the defensive end. They're a slow you down, really kind of grind with you team. They actually had a transfer that came in literally 3 days before we played them. From UMBC, part of that UMBC team. He had a double-double when they beat Virginia a few years ago. But at that point, you're sitting at 2-2 at home in conference play, and you've still got the big guns coming up. North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and South Dakota were all still coming up on the schedule. And so there was a point there where you thought, okay, is this team going to live up to the hype, pick second in the league to start the year? Ended up finishing 4th. But then the Golden Eagles split in Fargo, split at home against South Dakota State, and only actually had the chance to play 1 in an absolute shootout in Vermilion, South Dakota, and fell by a point. Max Asmus missed a shot at the buzzer, got a pretty good look, but missed it. That would have won the game. And so I think seeing them split in those series virtually showed everybody, okay, this team is ready to go and compete against the teams that have, frankly, been controlling the league over the last few years. It had been 9 consecutive years in which either South Dakota State or North Dakota State had won the Summit League Tournament Championship. And so that started to turn the tide a little bit, and I think showed everybody this team was ready to go and compete, and of course ended up winning a conference championship.
How about on a personal level? Have you ever called an NCAA tournament game?
This is a first for me. This is my 5th year at the Division I level. It was pointed out to me by a couple of my professors. It's been less than 15 years since I first attended sports media camp. at Oklahoma State. And so it has been kind of a wild ride. Not everybody gets to experience an NCAA tournament in general, much less somebody of my age. I'm still just 31. So I am really, really looking forward to it. I've been reaching out and asking for some pointers from guys that I know that have been there before. And it'll be, some deep breaths before the ball goes in the air at 3:00 Eastern on Friday. But I am really looking forward to it.
Well, similar to the Hoosiers reference that the basket's still 10 feet tall and the court still the same length, right? It's still the same game. I'm sure you'll have fun calling it. And also nice to know that there are going to be some fans. It's a limited capacity, but actually get to play in a venue that has some level of fan attendance. I know Ohio State really enjoyed that down in Indianapolis this past weekend at the Big Ten tournament. To be playing in a venue that at least had a few thousand people made a huge difference and really added to that game day environment. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Mackey Arena at Purdue or not, but it is a loud venue. So even with a diminished crowd, I imagine you'll still feel like it's a pretty good environment.
Yeah, I have not been to Mackey. I'm looking forward to getting there. I have done baseball at Purdue before, but
Okay.
I've not been to Mackey for basketball. So I'm looking forward to getting up there. I get to bring my family along, which worked out really well, and they're going to get to come to the game. So I've got 4 kids that are 7 and younger that all bleed gold and blue. So they're looking forward to getting up there too. And they got to join us in Sioux Falls as well. So they've gotten to experience a lot, which has been cool to get to see them enjoy the experience as well.
Yeah, that's cool. One more quick one for you, and it's maybe more on the Ohio State side. As the team and as you have prepared for this game, what are your thoughts on the Buckeyes? What do you like? What bothers you? What scares you? Where do you think you can attack them?
Well, what bothers me is the shortest guy in the starting 5 is 6'3", so he's going to have about a 3 or 4 inch advantage on Asmus. But what encouraged me as I went through there was that there's not anybody who's just overly sized. There's not but a 7-footer running around or anything, so that's helpful. But teams, we saw this against Missouri and Oklahoma State, teams that had several long guards. Obviously, that's an advantage when you're playing a couple of guys trying to defend a team like ORU, who's got a 6-foot starting point guard and 6'1" or 6'2" shooting guard. So that kind of length gave the Golden Eagles, especially on the perimeter, some trouble early on in the season. So we'll see how they're able to navigate that now that they've gone through that several times. Again, Arkansas provided that kind of challenge as well. So they've seen that a few times. The question is, can they recall those opportunities back in the non-conference schedule and now use that and try to use that to their advantage, or at least to try to negate some of that height differential in this tournament?
Should be a lot of fun. Friday, March 19th, 3:00, round 1. Ohio State and Oral Roberts. The winner will play either Florida or Virginia Tech, the 7 and 10 seeds in the South region, with a chance to maybe go to the Sweet 16 on the line. Good luck, Adam, to the Golden Eagles. Thanks for your time this afternoon, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me.